Now, she might be the president's choice to succeed Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State. If that were the case, would you support her?
I would be very hard-pressed.
If it were John Kerry, would you support him?
John Kerry came within a whisker of being president of the United States. I think that works in his favor. But I'd love to hear him make his case. But I don't have anything in his background like this tragedy in Benghazi that would make me really want to carefully examine the whole situation.
If President Obama nominates Democratic Senator John Kerry instead of UN Ambassador Susan Rice for Secretary of State, Massachusetts would hold a special election to fill Senator Kerry's seat, which provokes this question.
Would you be running again if the special election were to permit that?
Well, first of all, it is speculation. There's no vacancy that I'm aware of, and we'll see what happens.
With Elizabeth Warren poised to be sworn into defeated Senator Scott Brown's Senate seat in January, today the Scott Brown for Senate Campaign 2.0 got everything it could hope for from Republican Senators John McCain, Lindsey Graham, and Kelly Ayotte after their meeting with Ambassador Rice.
We are significantly troubled by many of the answers that we got.
Bottom line, I'm more disturbed now than I was before.
I want to say that I'm more troubled today.
Senator McCain's embarrassing past with Libya includes a meeting in Tripoli in 2009 with dictator Muammar Gaddafi to discuss the possible delivery of military equipment to that dictator. At his side at that meeting, as usual, of course, was Lindsey Graham. Also joining him was Senator Joe Lieberman. Today, after meeting with Ambassador Rice, retiring Senator Joe Lieberman chose not to join the baseless criticism of Ambassador Rice.
Based on what she has said, as clearly as possible, backed up by the director of the CIA, I think it wouldn't be fair to disqualify her based on what she said Sunday morning.
Ambassador Rice released this statement after meeting with the Republican senators. While we certainly wish that we had had perfect information just days after the terrorist attack, as is often the case, the intelligence assessment has evolved. We stressed that neither I nor anyone else in the administration intended to mislead the American people. Joining me now, MSNBC's Karen Finney and Howard Feynman. Howard, what is your understanding of how these meetings actually went today? We got a very little by way of actual reports on what went on there. You got Lindsey Graham trying to say something happened in this meeting to make the situation worse. What could that have been?
Well, from talking to a top official in the White House and top aide to Senator McCain, the sense I got is that actually behind closed doors, the meeting wasn't as contentious as those statements afterwards made it sound, at least as regards Ambassador Rice. I think both sides agree that there are legitimate questions to be asked about the timeline of what happened in Benghazi, about the state of knowledge at the time, about the military actions or lack thereof at the time, about security protections, and so forth. But as far as holding Ambassador Rice personally accountable for the incomplete and in some cases wrong story that she gave on 5 different shows that Sunday, I don't think behind closed doors that the Republican senators were going after her personally. They came out afterwards and made it sound like the grave matter that it was involving her. I don't think that's where they're at behind closed doors. At least that's what the sense I get from talking to people on both sides.
Let's listen to President Obama on November 14th about the senators' attacks on Ambassador Rice.
But when they go after the UN ambassador, apparently because they think she's an easy target, then they've got a problem with me. And should I choose, if I think that she would be the best person to serve America in the capacity of the State Department, then I will nominate her.
Then I will nominate her. Karen Finney, are these Republicans actually painting the president into a corner where he almost has to nominate her?
They might, and it may end up being that Susan Rice should actually send John McCain some flowers and thank him for this behavior. I mean, look, but the president's answer right there, I'll make 2 points, says exactly why this is a good fight for him. If he takes them on over this, that is a win-win for this president, because he will have a lot of people behind him, both in terms of public sentiment. We've got new polling today that suggests that whereas people aren't quite thrilled with how this matter has been handled, they don't think that the intention was to mislead the American people. And even other members of the Senate, starting with Joe Lieberman, have started to distance themselves from what I think is the 3 newest members of the bat crap crazy party with this assertion against Susan Rice. And the second point I'll make is, let's be very clear about what happened. She went out and used talking points that were not designed to mislead the American people, but were edited so that the enemy wouldn't know what we knew. Now, if that's not something that a person who has sworn to protect this country isn't supposed to do, then I'm not quite sure what is.
Howard Fryman, let's get into the Massachusetts piece of this story. These Republicans would obviously be very welcoming to John Kerry's nomination, because that would open up a Senate seat. They'd have to have a special election there, and they see their pal Scott Brown as maybe a shoo-in for that. But we have reports tonight in the Boston Globe saying that Congressman Ed Markey is looking at that seat. He looked at it, I know, very seriously when John Kerry was nominated for president. If John Kerry had won the presidency, Ed Markey was going to run for that seat.
Yeah, I honestly don't think that the Scott Brown 2.0 wins in a flash seat in Massachusetts is one that the Republicans necessarily believe in, unless they're even more deluded than I think they already are. I think it would be a tough race. I think Scott Brown tarnished himself with the way he ran against Elizabeth Warren. I think if Ed Markey jumps in it, and he's thought about it on and off again for years and years, as you know him well, Lawrence, I think he'd be a formidable candidate. He'd be well-funded, well-financed, have a lot of support up there. I think that the performance of John McCain and Lindsey Graham and now Kelly Ayotte is just mostly political theater as it relates to Susan Rice. Yes, again, there are legitimate questions about Benghazi and security globally for American diplomats. But the Susan Rice thing has a sort of measure of insanity about it as political theater, and really is the kind of thing, Lawrence, and we've seen it a million times, sometimes Washington goes crazy over what is essentially a non-substantive high school argument. And I think that's what the thing with Susan Rice is. Acknowledging there are legitimate issues. Susan Rice is not the issue. Susan Rice is definitely not the issue. If I were Susan Rice, I'd be mad at the president and the intel people and the press people for sending her out there the way they did. I don't totally buy the thing that she was covering the story to keep the bad guys from knowing what we were doing. They handed her a bad piece of paper. Like a good soldier, she went out there and set it on 5 channels. It's not her fault.
Karen Finney, take the last word on this.
I disagree with that because, again, there's this whole issue between what was classified and unclassified. But more importantly, this is the sad demise of John McCain, who used to be someone that I think people looked up to and respected. And increasingly, he looks small and petty. And it's very sad to see it happen.
Karen Finney and Howard Fryman, thank you both for joining me tonight.
Thanks, Lawrence.